O Lord, who for our sake did fast 40 days and 40 nights, give us grace to use such self-control that our flesh may be subdued and the spirit bear forth his peaceable fruits. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, we're with Bishop Gilbert Burnet. What volume are we in? We're volume 5, and this is the journal of King Edward VI that reading through. We started that last time. He's talking about something here of a fight at Norwich and Northampton with a number of 1,060 horsemen who, winning the town of Norwich, kept it one day, one night, and the next day in the morning with the loss of 100 men, put it out of the town, among whom Lord Sheffield was slain. There were taken divers gentlemen serving to the number of 30, with which victory the rebels were very glad. But afterward, hearing that the Earl of Warwick came against them, they began to stay upon a strong plat of ground upon a hill near to the town of Norwich, having the town confederate with them. The Earl of Warwick came with a number of 6,000 men, 1,500 horsemen, and entered the town of Norwich, which having won, it was so weak that he could scarcely defend it. And oftentimes the rebels came into the streets, killing divers of his men, and were repulsed again. Yea, and the townsmen were given to mischief themselves. So having endured their assaults 3 days, stopped their victuals, the rebels were constrained for lack of meat to remove, whom the Earl of Warwick followed with 1,000 Almains. They appear in connection with Charles V's occupation of Italy. Are they German mercenaries? Anyways, and his horsemen, leaving the English footmen in the town, and overcame them in plain battle, killing 2,000 of them and taking Kite, their captain, who in January following was hanged at Norwich, and his head hanged out. Kite's brother was taken also and punished alike. In the mean season, Chastilian besieged the pier of Boulogne, made in the haven, and after a long battery of 20,000 shot or more, gave assault to it, and were manfully repulsed. Nevertheless, they continued to siege there, and made often skirmishes and false assaults, in which they won not much. Therefore, seeing they profited little that way, they planted ordnance against the mouth of the haven, that no victual might come to it. Set upon them by night, and slew divers Frenchmen, and dismounted many of their pieces. Nevertheless, the French came another time and planted their ordnance toward the sand side of the sand hills, and beat divers ships of victuallers at the entry of the haven. Frenchmen, seeing they could not prevail, continued their battery but smally, on which they spent 1,500 shot in a day, but laded a galley with stones and gravel, which they go into one stream. This is pretty remarkable for a young man's journal. But ere it sunk, it came near to one bank, where the Boulogne took it out and brought the stones to reinforce the pier. Also at Guinness was a certain skirmish, in which there were about 100 Frenchmen slain, of which some were gentlemen and noblemen. In the mean season in England, it's misspelled, rose great stirs, like to increase much, if it had not been well foreseen. The council, about 19 of them, were gathered in London, thinking to meet with the Lord Protector, and to make him amend some of his disorders. He, fearing his estate, caused the secretary in my name to be sent to the lords to know for what cause they gathered their powers together, and if they meant to talk with him, that they should come in peaceable manner. The next morning, being 6 October, on Saturday, he commanded the armor be brought down out of the armory at Hampton Court, with 500 harnesses, to arm both his and my men, with all the gates of the house to be rempered, people to be raised. People came abundantly to the house at night, with all the people about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I went to Windsor and was watch and word kept every night. The Lord sat in open places of London, calling for gentlemen before them, and declaring the causes of accusation of the Lord Protector, caused the same to be proclaimed. After which few came to Windsor, but only mine own men and of the guard, whom the Lord's willed, fearing the rage of the people, so lately quieted. Then began the Protector to treat by letters, sending Sir Philip Hobby, lately come from his ambassadorship in Flanders, to see his family, who brought in his return a letter to the Protector, very gentle, which he delivered to him, another to me, another to my house, to declare his faults, ambition, vainglory, entering into rash wars in mine youth, negligent looking on New Haven, enriching himself of my treasure, following his own opinion and doing all by his own authority, which letters was openly read, and immediately the lords came to Windsor, took him and brought him through Holborn to the Tower. Afterward I came to Hampton Court, there's no H there, where they appointed by my consent 6 lords of the council to be attendant on me, at least 2 and 4 nights. Lords the Marquis Northampton, Earls of Warwick and Arundel, Lords Russell, St. John, and Wentworth, Knights Sir Andrew Dudley, Sir Edward Rogers, and Sir Thomas Darcy, and Sir Thomas Roth. After I came through London to Westminster, the Lord of Warwick made Admiral of England. Sir Thomas Shaney went to the Emperor for relief, which he could not obtain. Mr. Wotton made Secretary. The Lord Protector, by his own agreement and submission, lost his protectorship, treasurership, marshalship, and all his movables, and near £2,000 land by Act of Parliament. The Earl of Arundel committed to his house for certain crimes of suspicion against him, as plucking down bolts and locks at Westminster, given of my staff away, and put a fine of £12,000 to be paid, £1,000 yearly, of which he was afterward released. After also Mr. Southwell committed to the Tower for certain bills of sedition, written with his own hand, and put a fine of £500. Likewise Sir Thomas Arundel and 6 then committed to the Tower for conspiracies in the West Parts, a parliament where he made a manner to consecrate priests, bishops, and deacons. Mr. Paget, surrendering his controllership, was made Lord Paget of Bootersig, and cited into the higher house by the writ of Parliament. Sir Anthony Wingfield, before Vice Chamberlain, made Comptroller. Now we come to anno 1549. Peace concluded between England, France, and Scotland by our English side, John Earl of Bedford, Lord Privy Seal, Lord Paget de Boudessart, Sir William Peter, Secretary, and Sir John Mason. On the French side, Monsieur de Rochepot, Monsieur Chastelon, Willard de Mortier, and Boucherel de Sarcy, upon conditions. that all titles, tribute, and defenses should remain, that the fault of one man except should be punished, break not the league, that the ships of merchandise shall pass to and fro, that pirates shall be called back, and ships of war. The prisoners shall be delivered of both sides, that we shall not war with Scotland, at Boulogne with pieces of new conquest, and 2 Bazilus, a bunch of, it's got all the list of the lords and signed that. Also, that at the delivery of the town, ours should come home. First payment, 3 of theirs. And if the Scotis raise Lords and Douglas, we must raise Hyneth and Roxborough. Anno 1550, this peace, Anno 1550, proclaimed at Calais, Toulouse, and Boulogne, in London bonfires, a sermon on thanksgiving for peace and Te Deum sung. My Lord Somerset was delivered of his bonds and came to court. April. The Parliament prorogued to the 2nd day of the term in October next ensuing. Nicholas Ridley, before of Rochester, made Bishop of London and received his oath. Thomas Thirlby, before of Westminster, made Bishop of Norwich and received his oath. The Bishop of Chichester, before a vehement affirmer of transubstantiation, did preach against at Westminster in the preaching place. Removing from Greenwich from Westminster, our hostages passed the narrow seas between Dover and Calais. Monde Firmin, gentlemen of the King's Privy Chamber, passed from the French King by England to the Scottish Queen to tell her of the peace. An ambassador come from Gustav, the Southan King, called Andre for surety, amity, touching merchandise. The hostages delivered on both sides for the ratification of the league with France and Scotland. For because some said to Monsieur Rochepot, lieutenant, that Mondeguis, father to the Marquis of Means, was dead. Therefore the delivery was put over a day. My Lord Warwick was General Warden of the North, Mr. Herbert President of Wallace, and the one had granted to him 1,000 mark and the other 500. Licenses signed for the whole council, and certain of the Privy Chamber among the 2340 retainers. My Lord Somerset taken into the council, Guidotti, the beginner of the talk for peace, recompensed with knightdom, 1,000 crowns reward, 1,000 crowns pension, and his son with 250 crowns pension. Certain prisoners for light matters dismissed, agreed for delivery of French prisoners taken in the wars. Peter Van sent ambassador to Venice. Letters directed to certain Irish nobles to take a blind legate coming from the Pope, calling himself Bishop of Archmally. Commissions for the delivery of Boulogne, Lords, and Douglas. The Flemings, men of war, would have passed our ships without veiling bonnet, which they seeing shot at them and drave them at length to veil bonnet, and so depart. Mon Tremail, Mon Vice-Dam de Char, and Mon Hennati came to Dover, and the rest tarried at Calais till they had leave. Order taken that whosoever had benefices given them should preach before the king in or out of Lent, and every Sunday there should be a sermon. The 3 hostages aforesaid came to London, being met at Deptford by the Lord Grey of Wilton, Lord Bray, with divers other gentlemen, to the number of 20, serving men and 100. Commission given to the Lord Chobham, Deputy of Calais, Sir William Peter, Chief Secretary, and Sir John Mason, French Secretary. Sir John Mason taken into Privy Council, and William Thomas made clerk of the same. Whereas the Emperor's ambassador desired leave by letters patents that my lady might have mass, was denied him. And where he said we break the league with him by making peace with Scotland, it was answered that the French king and not I did comprehend them, saving that I might not invade them without occasion. Lords being besieged by the Scots, the captain hearing that peace was proclaimed in England, delivered it as the peace. Are you done? Order taken for the chamber that 3 of the outer privy chamber gentlemen should always be here, and 2 lie in the palace. The Marquis de Means, the Duke d'Anjou, and the constable's son arrived at Dover. Mons Trimoul and Vice Dam of Chartres, Mons Henadier, came to the court and saw the order of the Garter, and the knights with the sovereign received the communion. Certain articles touching a straighter amity in merchandise to the king of Suthen being these: if the king of Suthen sent bullion, he should have our commodities and pay no toll. Second, he should bring bullion to none other prince. Thirdly, if he brought osmus and steel and copper, he should have our commodities and pay custom as an Englishman. It was answered to the Duke of Brunswick that whereas he offered service with 10,000 men of his land, that the war was ended for the marriage of my lady Mary to him. There was talk of her marriage with the infant of Portugal, spelled differently, which being determined, he should have answer. The Lord Clinton, captain of Boulogne, having sent away before all his men, saving 1,800, and all his ordnance, saving that the treaty did reserve, was issued out of the town with these 1,800, delivering it to Monsieur Chestillon, receiving of him the 6 hostages English, acquittance for delivery of the town, and safe conduct to come to Calais. Whether he came, he placed 1,800 in the emperor's frontiers. The Marquis du Mains, Comte d'Argonne, and constable's son were received at Blackheath by my lord of Rutland, my lord of Grey Wilton, my lord Bray, my lord Lisle, and divers gentlemen. What are you watching?
Oversimplified.
It was granted that my lord of Somerset should have all his movable goods and leases, except those that be already given. The king of Suthen's ambassador departed home to his master. The Comte d'Aiguin, brother to the Duke of Vendôme, and the next heir to the crown after the king's children. The Marquis de Means, brother to the Scottish queen, and Monsieur Montmorency, the constable's son, came to the court. Certain were taken that went about to have an insurrection in Kent upon May Day following, and the priest, who was the chief worker, ran away into Essex, where he was laid for. Joan Boker, otherwise called Joan of Kent, was burned for holding that Christ was not incarnate of the Virgin Mary, being condemned the year before, but kept in hope of conversion. On the 30th of April, Bishop of London and Bishop of Ely were to persuade her. This is 1550. Wow. She withstood them and reviled the preacher that preached at her death. The first payment was paid at Calais and received by Sir Thomas Dennis from Mr. Sherrington. Wherefore the Lord Clinton, before Captain of Boleyn, came to the court, where after thanks he was made Admiral of England upon the surrender of the Earl of Warwick patent. He was also taken into the Privy Council and promised further reward. The captain also and officers of the town were promised rewards. Monsieur de Brezé also passed by the court to Scotland, where at Greenwich he came to the king, telling him that the French king would see him if he lacked any commodity that he had, he would give it to him. The master of Askin and Monsieur Moret's brother came out of Scotland for the acceptation of peace, who afterward had passport into France. The council drew a book for every shire, who should be lieutenants in them and who would tarry with me. But the lieutenants were appointed to tarry till Chastelon-Sarcy. Proclamation was made that the soldiers should return to their mansions, and the mayor of London had charged to look through all the wards to take them and send them to their counties. The debt of £30,000 in odd money was put over a year. Proclamation was made that all wool winders take an oath that they would make good cloth there, as the Lord Chancellor would appoint them, according to an act of Parliament made by Edward III. The Lord Cobham, Secretary Peter, and Sir John Mason came to the French king to Amiens, and so brought their lodgings, which were well dressed. The French king took the oath for the acceptation of the treaty. Our ambassadors departed from the French court, leaving Sir John Mason as legier. The Duke of Somerset was taken into the Privy Chamber, and likewise also the Lord Admiral. It was appointed that all the light horsemen of Boleyn and the men of arms should be paid their wages and be led by the Lord Marquis of Northampton, captain of the pensioners. The comprehension of peace with Scotland was accepted so far as the league went, and sealed with the master of Askin, departed into France, removing to Westminster from Greenwich. The French king came to Boleyn to visit the pieces lately delivered unto him, and appoint an order. The ambassador came to me, presenting the legier, and also delivering letters of credence from the French king. The ambassadors came to the court, where they saw me take the oath for the acceptation of the treaty, and afterward dined with me, and after dinner saw a pastime of 10 against 10 at the ring, whereof on the one side were the Duke of Suffolk, Vice Dam, Lord Lisle, and 7 other gentlemen apparelled in yellow. The ambassadors saw the baiting of bears and bulls. The ambassadors, after they'd hunted, sat with me at supper. The same went to see Hampton Court, where they did hunt, and in the same night returned to Durrisby Place. One that, by the way, have marriage, had thought to assemble the people, and so to make an insurrection in Kent, was taken by the gentlemen of the shire, and afterward punished. The ambassadors had a fair supper. June. The king came to Shine, where was a marriage made between Lord Lisle, the Earl of Warwick's son, and the Lady Anne, daughter to the Duke of Somerset, which done, and a fair dinner made, and dancing finished. The king and the ladies went into 2 chambers made of bows, where first he saw 6 gentlemen on the one side, their names who here do follow: the Lord Edward, Sir John Appleby. And afterward came 3 masters of one side and 2 of another, which ran 4 courses apiece. Last of all came the Count of Aragon with 3 Italians, who ran with all the gentlemen 4 courses and afterwards fought a tourney. So after supper he returned to Westminster. Sir Robert Dudley, 3rd son to the Earl of Warwick, married to Sir John Rosepart's daughter, after which marriage there were certain gentlemen who did strive who should first take away a goose's head, which was hanged alive on 2 cross posts. There was tilt and tourney on foot, with as great staves as they run withal on horseback. We're moving to Greenwich. The justice of my progress were set forth, from which were these: from Greenwich to Westminster, from Westminster to Hampton Court, from Hampton to Windsor, from Windsor to Guildford, from Guildford to Oatland, from Oatland to Richmond. Also the Vice Dam made a great supper to the Duke of Somerset, the Marquis of Northampton, with divers masks and other conceits. The Duke of Somerset, Marquis Northampton, Lord Treasurer, Bedford, and the Secretary Peter went to the Bishop of Winchester to know what he would stick. He made answer. The first payment of the Frenchman was up in the Tower for all chances. The books of my proceedings was sent to the Bishop of Winchester to see whether he would set his hand to it or promise to set it forth to the people. 11. Order was given for fortifying and victualling Calais for 4 months. And also Sir Harry Palmer and Sir Alka were sent to the frontiers of Scotland to take a view of all the forts there and to report to the council where they thought best to fortify. Commissions were signed to Sir William Herbert and 30 others to entreat of certain matters in Wales, and also instructions to the same how to behave himself in the presidentship. The Surveyor of Calais was sent to Calais first to raise the walls of Risbank toward the sand hills, and after to make the wall massy again, and the round bulwark to change to a pointed one, which should run 20 foot into the sea, to beat the sand hills and raise the mount. Secondly, to view Newman Brig, to make an high bulwark in the midst with flankers, to beat through all the strait, and also 4 sluices to make Calais haven better. Afterward, he was bid to go to Gisnes, where first was to take away the 3-cornered bulwark, to make the outward wall of the keep, and to fill the space between the keep and the said outward wall. Atwood and Lambert were sent to take view of Alderney. The Duke of Somerset, with 5 other of the council, went to the Bishop of Winchester, to whom he made this answer: I have deliberately seen the Book of Common Prayer. I'm going to copy this. This is old Stevie Gardner. I have deliberately seen the Book of Common Prayer, although I would not have made it so myself. Yet I find such things in it as satisfieth my conscience. Therefore both will I execute it myself, and also see other my parishioners do it. This was subscribed by the foresaid councillors, that they heard him saying these words. The Lord Marquis, Mr. Herbert, the Vice Dam, Hanadoy, and divers other gentlemen went to the Earl of Warwick, and they were honorably received. I went to Deptford, being bidden to supper by the Lord Clinton, where before supper I saw certain stand upon the end of a boat, without holding anything, and ran one at another, till one was cast in the water. Supper, Monsieur Vice Dam, Hanadoy supped with me. And I think that's where we will call it. Glory be to the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.